Today I wanted to start at the book of Malachi. And Malachi is an interesting book. It's right at the very end of our formal Old Testament. Remember, the Old Testament was set up with, of course, in groups. You had the Torah, you have history books, you have poetry, you have major prophets. Who are the bigger prophets? They have more to say. You also have the minor prophets, and he's at the end of them. And it's interesting how also, let's remind this chart that I've made that goes from Jeremiah up through Nehemiah. We see Malachi is about the same time as Esther, give or take. And so we have Haggai and Zechariah here to remind where we are in history and what's going on. The temple is made here. They've gone back into the city, but they spend this time building the city even up into the time of Nehemiah, and there are struggles getting the city built. And we're all going over decades here to build this city because they had a lot of enemies and a lot of struggles. So we see when Malachi is there, we haven't had Ezra. Ezra was the one who reintroduced the law formally. He's the one who read the Torah before the people. We tend to remember this has not happened yet. These Jews are kind of putting it all together. This is not to give them excuse. In fact, this book does just the opposite. It holds them accountable. You have this idea that they would know, should have known, and they needed to do certain things. So we begin with the burden of the Lord, word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi. Now the word burden, we see that word used a lot in Jeremiah, especially the burden of Damascus, the burden of Egypt, the burden of Babylon. The word burden is something that used contextually to understand the meaning of the word, something you have to do. If the yard needs to be mowed and I say mow the yard, that's your burden. You need to do it. This is something you need to look into. If I say that the tire is flat on the car, you need to go look at it. This is something you need to do. Burden is something they needed to look at. So he's bringing this up, and there's a lot of terse language here. The whole book is kind of terse. It even ends with the word curse. And I will give the hearts of the fathers to the children, and to the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. So it's interesting how we have the Old Testament formally ends with a curse. Now, to be fair, if I was looking at the books historically, the last book was Nehemiah. And Nehemiah ends differently. It ends actually with, remember me for good. Oh God, remember me for good. So either way you look at it, if you take the formalized one where we end with a curse, Jesus comes to take away the curse. He becomes the curse. If you take it historically and you end with Nehemiah, remember me for good. Okay, who was good? Jesus. Jesus was good. So either way you go to Jesus. So whether you go formalized or whether you want to read the books historical, which I've tried to do, you get there. But Malachi is taken out of context. We haven't had Ezra. We haven't had Nehemiah and his strength in building and all the resources he would bring to play for the city. Remember when he got there, the walls were still down. When he got there, they still had enemies round about. There was a struggle going on, and this would be another 40 years down the road. So okay, but God doesn't give them a pass. This is tied to the temple. This is tied to the worship. This whole book is tied to the temple. It isn't tied to the sociological. He starts saying here, I have loved you, said the Lord. Yet you say, wherein have you loved us? In this book, we're going to find the Israel at that time as being a little snarky, this little contemptuous. Well, where have you loved us? If you said, I did this for you, well, when did you do it? Why are you getting in God's face? If he says, you don't say, well, when did you love us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. He's talking about his power here. This is not about election, choosing one or another, because those of us that one over another, let me slow down, because those of us that have been through this much of the Bible understand that Jehovah, Yahweh, took the Israelites kicking and screaming most of the way, and he had to destroy the northern kingdom with Assyria. He created Assyria to try to draw them in, and finally he let them go. He destroyed the southern kingdom with Babylon, except for a remnant that went up there, and now that remnant is trickling back. Don't see that, they've been calling out to him. You'll realize when you look at the judges, when you look at the kings, when you look at most of Israel's history, it is dark and gloomy. It is filled with corruption. It's filled with prophets who are lying. It's filled with teachers and diviners and witches and soothsayers. It's filled with evil kings. It's filled with all kinds of hypersexuality, violence, worshiping other gods in the face of Jehovah himself in his city. Why God didn't wipe them out and make them a wilderness for the dragons? That's the question that should be asked. So there's a lot of hardness going on here in the fact that these people are now doing the things of their fathers. So that's what he's saying there. And Edom said, we are impoverished, but we will return. There's a lot of pride in Edom. But he's going to cast down Edom. He's going to cast down the pride of Edom continually. He says, the people against whom the Lord has indignation forever. See, that's the point. What needs to be brought to play is, one is lifted up and loved, and the other one is treated with the indignation. And you're sitting there lofting it up and putting your thumbs in your chest, going, oh, wonderful us. No, I could have loved them and treated you with indignation. You could have been a place of dragons. See the problem? And so we don't see that because we look at it too basically. We look at it too theologically. We don't let the emotions of the book, nor do we let the historicalness of the book. We tend to jump into this part of the book, the end, that's what I'm looking at here, the end of the book to decide the beginning, instead of letting the beginning of the book encourage us to understand the end. So he's going to do with this with Edom. He talks to them as a son honors his father, and a servant his master. If then I be a father, where is my honor? If I'm a master, where is my fear? See, O you priests that despise my name. And they go, wherein have we despised your name? Oh my gosh, really? Is that where you're going? Instead of saying, I'm sorry, I did not mean to despise your name. What can I do? Wherein have we done this? Look at the pride. It's a wonder he doesn't wipe these guys out. And so he's talking with them, but you offer polluted bread on my altar. Wherein have we polluted thee? Oh, why God isn't coming down. And that you say the table of God is contemptuous. You have offered the blind of the sacrifice. Is that not evil? You offer the lame and the sick. Is that not evil? Offer it to your governor. Offer the same meals and stuff that you give me to your governor. And see how that would go. He talks about them, that he goes here, from the rising of the sun and to the setting down of the same, my name shall be great among the Gentiles. And in every place incense shall be burned unto my name, and a pure offering for my name shall be great among the heathen. His whole thing about this whole temple worship was to make his name great among the heathens. So the heathens, Gentiles like you and me, would come to Jehovah. That's been the goal. But you profaned it, saying the table of the Lord is polluted, and the fruit thereof is contemptible. Maybe they didn't say that. Maybe they did. But they acted like it was contemptible. He says, behold, you say, what a weariness it is. It's weary to follow God. It's so weary. I'm so tired. I got to go to the temple and do this thing. And you've brought me the sick and the lame. And should I accept this at your hand? He said, cursed be the deceiver that has a male in his flock, and vowed and sacrificed it unto the Lord as a corruptible thing. Even if you had one and you brought it, here, kill it. Go ahead. There you go. Here's that one. Fine. Let's do this and make this guy happy so I can move on. He's just seething here. For I am a great king. That's the ending of chapter 1, is to state, I am a great king and you are not treating me like a great king. See, this is the problem we have with Malachi, is we turn it into almost a vending machine when it is, you're given a burden from a great king who's saying, here's where you're getting it wrong. And now, you priests, this commandment is to you. If you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to heart, to give glory to the name unto the Lord of hosts, I will send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessings. And yea, I will curse them. I have cursed them already, because you did not lay it to heart. Listen to him. You didn't lay it to heart. You wanted all these blessings. You didn't lay it to heart. You didn't worship me with heart. You're just going through the motions. And he says, I'll corrupt your seed and spread dung on your face, even the dung of your solemn. He calls their solemn feast dung. I'd really like to use that S word right now that's very popular in America. I won't, but that's what he's saying. He's using that word here. That's what he's saying, is that's what your solemn feasts are to me. Just a pile of, fill it in. Because you do not, and one should take you away with it. I love that. This is what your feasts are, and they should take you away with it. You're just like your feast. He just called them a pile of, fill in the word, please, for me. He goes here also. I have sent this commandment unto you, and my commandment might be that, let me back up. I have sent this commandment unto you that my covenant might be with Levi. My covenant was with him. My covenant was with him for life and peace, and I gave it to him for the fear. Therefore he feared me and was afraid before my name. The Levites were afraid before my name. Your father Levi was afraid before my name. Why aren't you afraid? The law is truth. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. And he walked with peace and equity, and he did not turn away, and he did turn away from iniquity. He did turn away from iniquity. He's using even their father as an example of where they've gone away. And as notice that we think of iniquity as just sin, but iniquity is the opposite of equity, and they don't sound the same, but they are. One's equity is doing what's fair. Iniquity is doing what's not fair. Sin is a little different than iniquity. And iniquity is sin. But to be more specific, the sin of iniquity is not being fair, not meeting the challenge. And here's how your father had done. He walked with equity. He did what he should, and you were walking in iniquity. And that's what he's saying here. But you've departed, and you've caused many to stumble in the law. This is even worse. Not only you getting it wrong, but others are getting it wrong. You have corrupted yourself. So I'm going to go back and say, even though they didn't have Ezra, they had the law. So I misspoke there. They had the law, and they could have done it. They just weren't. Okay, let me fix a little bit of something there. You have departed out of the way. You stumbled at the law. Therefore, I also make you contemptuous and base before all the people, according to as you have not kept my ways. And have we not all one Father? Have we not one God that created us? And why do you deal treacherously every man against his brother by profaning the covenant of your fathers? Why don't you keep the covenant? Why are you profaning it and dealing treacherously? The word treacherously we see coming up a lot. And it's not to deal rightly with. To be treacherous is to be deceitful on purpose. I'm treacherous. I'm not somebody. I have a reason and I'm being treacherous. And it's also dangerous. It's dangerous for a culture not to follow God. So we see him here, you're dealing treacherously. He will cut off the man that doth this, the master and the scholar out of the tabernacle of Jacob, for him that offered an offering unto the Lord of hosts. So he talks about this. And you have done this, covering the altar with tears and with weeping and with crying out, insomuch that he regarded not the offering any more, nor received it with goodwill at your hands. And you go, wherefore? Really? Here he's saying that here's what you've done. You've come crying, but you have this terrible, you're doing this wrong. You have these terrible gifts, these terrible sacrifices, but yet you're crying out to me. And he goes, wherefore? Because the Lord has been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. These men were also using their power to deal treacherously with their wives. I'm not sure exactly what that means. It could mean in adultery. It could mean they're not dealing fairly with their wives, in a sense of fairness, of how God wanted a man to treat a woman. The Lord has been witness against thee, and the wife of thy youth against thee, for thou hast dealt treacherously, yet she is thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. So you're not keeping the covenant with your wife. It might be adultery. It might just be you're not taking care of her like you should. And did he not make one? Yet had he residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. So the idea of the marriage is to create godly seed, and you're dealing treacherously by not making godly seed. So he's leaning a little bit maybe to adultery, maybe to this hard-heartedness to the wife, but you're not creating godly seed. You're not creating men and women who will follow God, and that's what we're supposed to do, actually, as Christians. We're supposed to do this. But he talks about that you're dealing treacherously against the wife of your youth. For the Lord, the God of Israel, saith, He hateth putting away. Ooh, he's talking about divorce there. I hadn't seen that till now. Wow. Okay. I just now saw that. That's interesting. He hath hated putting away, for he hath covered violence. One covereth violence with his garment, saith the Lord of hosts. Therefore take heed of this spirit, and do not deal treacherously. They were divorcing their wives. Just, okay, I'm done with you. You can go. I've had my 5 years. I've had my 3 months. I've had my 6 months. Yeah, we have a couple of kids. I'm done. That's what the priests were doing. And that's not what God wanted. So I'm learning in this moment. Wow, that's good. I didn't even see that. And I read through this. For the Lord God of Israel saith, He hated putting away. And that's what violence is. That's what divorce is. Even Jesus talked about this when they asked him, should a man put away a woman in a writ of divorcement? Well, of course not. Wherefore the Lord God of Israel said, He hateth putting away. You have wearied the Lord with your words. You come to me with all your long speeches and all this long stuff, and you wearied me with your words. Your sacrifices are bad. You're putting away your wives. You're destroying your families. And he goes, he's weary with all of this. And then they say, wherefore have we wearied him? Oh my gosh, really, guys? Is that what we're doing here? Everyone that doth evil is good. Whenever you say everyone that doth evil is good in the sight of the Lord, He delighteth in them. Where is God's judgment? So here they're turning and saying, they're saying that doth evil, well, it's good in the sight of the Lord. If I do something evil, hey, Yahweh said that's good in the sight of Yahweh. We're doing that today in our culture, saying, if you live this lifestyle, it's good in the eyes of the Lord. If you do this kind of thing, or make this business thing, or you treat a person a certain way, well, it's good in the sight of the Lord. And that's what they're saying here. Or where is the God of judgment? If I'm doing wrong, where is this God of judgment? Why doesn't He strike me down? Why don't bad things happen to me? Oh my gosh, this is just so crazy. I'm going to go into chapters 3 and 4 tomorrow, but I want us to get this run up to chapter 3, because chapter 3 is one where we go as Christians. Oh my gosh, I want to get the benefits. But this is the responsibility. And I'm going to say something right now that you don't have to tithe if you're a Christian. Don't go to the scripture for tithing. You should be tithing because of the goodness. Look at what God is wanting these people to be, and your tithes should come from there. You don't tithe to open the windows. See, this was stated before Ezra, before Nehemiah, before Jesus. The windows were open when Christ went to the cross. He is that open window. Not all the benefits like new cars and money and romance and houses and kids and all this stuff that we think. The benefit, the window came open when Christ said, come to me, all you weak and heavy laden. He's the window. The curse that happens because of the people who will not keep the law. If you're going to take the benefit, you have to admit that you are part of the curse. And that's heresy. This curse does not belong to me, even though, yeah, I did it. But Christ took care of the curse of Malachi in chapter 1 and 2, and He is the benefit in chapters 3 and 4. Don't sit there and say, well, I'll take the law and the benefits of the law, but I don't take the responsibility of the law. That's not why Jesus came. That's why we have a new covenant. This old covenant will pass away, but the new covenant will not. So we need to be careful in chapter 3 and 4. But let's get a run up in chapters 1 and 2 and see the iniquity, see the hard-heartedness, see the contemptuousness of this people. This is very emotive information. We should have it to heart, and we should hate seeing this in our lives. And thank God for Christ and His coming. Thank you.